Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is Kodeations coming at you today with another video of Cookie Run Kingdom, and today we're going to be diving into none other than early game toppings guide. That is right, I heard that you guys out there are feeling super crummy when it comes to the individual toppings in the game and trying to decide what toppings to run on your heroes, especially early game starting off on day one in the game. So again, we're going to be diving into those today, but as always, before we dive in, if you are new to the channel and you want to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest mobile games, then be sure to smash that red subscribe button and hit that notification bell so you get a notification every time we drop a video. And with that being said, let's dive right in. Diving right in, ladies and gentlemen, so the first thing we need to mention right off the bat, and that is going to be the individual topping sets. So I know a lot of players currently right now, and I've even seen content creators already with guides that they have dropped out last week talking about the individual toppings and, you know, beginner's guide toppings videos, whatever you want to call them, but I've seen them making the mistake, for whatever reason, breaking up, you know, individual sets. Now, I highly recommend that you do not do that. I definitely think it's very crucial, especially early game, to focus on building and completing an individual set for that specific cookie, because not only are you going to be missing out on the individual additional set bonus, as you can see down here in the bottom, but you're also not going to have the ability early game to unlock all of the individual slots for all of your toppings. And so therefore, if you can focus in on getting a 2 set or a 3 set early game, I think it's going to make you a world of difference, because you're going to get that additional you know, bonus. So again, like I said, don't mix and match your sets. Now, maybe this is going to be a completely different video long term once we get to end game and we actually start to mid-max our account and hone in on individual stats and substats and, you know, mixing and matching different sets, you know, for that specific cookie. I highly recommend currently early game, because that's going to be what this video is going to be about. Is going to be all about early game you know, toppings guide for you guys, for those of you that are just trying to figure out exactly what topping to run on a specific class or a specific cookie. I highly recommend you make sure that you are not mixing and matching. So with that being said, let's dive right in. So the first cookie that we're going to be taking a look at, or the first class of cookies, is going to be the defensive class. Now, if you don't know already, in this game, I know we got to shift a little bit from defense, but if you don't already know, in this game, the heals in this game are going to be scaled off of the individual attack. So if we look here at Sunny Garden, you can see healing 44.2% of attack. So with that being the case, you're going to be running your healers more than likely. Again, everybody might vary in, you know, their personal opinions. Some people might say running like cooldown reduction or something to allow, you know, heals more often, or whatever you think. I just don't think, once you do the math, especially early game, I don't think that it's going to be worth running a cooldown reduction to get 1 second off of your heal versus actually running attack, because the attack, since your heals scale off of the attack, are going to do a lot more healing if you build, you know, your healers on attack. So with that being the case, I don't think that it's worth building your individual defenders or your tanks in the game, you know, on HP, because if you build them up to where they have so much HP and then a heal is going to go off, which is going to give your units more HP, it's not going to be very effective, versus if you were to utilize something like the Walnut set, as you can see that I currently have running right now, that's going to give my units individual defense. And with that being the case, the defense is going to add a lot more survivability, make them way more tanky to take a lot more hits, and not only that, it's going to help them when the heal does proc off to basically get them back to full max health as soon as possible, as much as possible. So I definitely think that it's 100% worth running defense over HP when it comes to tanks in the game. The next thing up that we want to mention when it comes to the individual toppings, and that is going to be when you're looking at defenders in general, what substats you are looking to get. Now again, the substat thing kind of dives into a little bit more of advanced stuff when it comes to toppings. You're not going to really want to min-max or focus a whole lot of, you know, on substats at the very beginning of the game, or when you're just, you know, grinding out into the game, at least up to castle probably 6 or 7, but once you get to that point and you're grinding out the game and you want to know what substats to focus on, or maybe you have already pumped your hand into a lot of different toppings just trying to test them out, and you've unlocked a couple substats and you're not really sure which one to use, I would highly recommend that you focus on damage resistance as #1 substat. The #2 substat when it comes to defense, you know, defenders in the game, and that is going to be the debuff resistance, because as with cookies like Night Cookie or Milk Cookie, both of them having an Etant ability, they're going to be soaking up a lot lot of damage from all of the other enemies, and with that being the case, they're going to be potentially taking a lot of debuffs because they're going to be focus fired, in which that being the case, having the debuff resistance is only going to help you mitigate some of that additional damage. And then last but not least, I'm going to say Amplify buff is probably going to be the next best, because if you don't already know, that I will drop a link down below in the description, but the developers have actually dropped a link on their Twitter and their Facebook page displaying 2 images, the buffs and debuffs. Now, I highly recommend that you guys go over there, check those out, and read those individual images, but they basically break down and tell you what items in the game count as buffs, what items in the game count as debuffs, and then taunts, they specifically say count as a buff. And with that being the case, Amplify buff directly increases the amount or duration of that specific buff. And with that being the case, running something like Amplify buff on a night cookie or a milk cookie is going to only increase the duration of that taunt, from my understanding. And with that being the case, like I said, it's not a bad substat to go, but that's going to be pretty much it when it comes to the defenders in the game. In my personal opinion, running a defense set is not a bad way to go at the beginning of the game. Again, this is a early game toppings guide. If we were talking about this in game, it might shift, and you might be willing to, to mix and match, some different sets, and, and explore a little bit more, and cater towards that individual cookie and what that cookie, could benefit from. So diving right into the next one. And that is going to be the support classes in the game. So if we hop over here, I'm just going to use Mint Choco Cookie here, for example. I have not personally built Mint Choco Cookie. I personally haven't built a single support class unit, but nevertheless, when we dive into the toppings that I highly recommend, I'm going to say number 1 is going to be the Sweet Candy toppings, and that's going to be the Amplify buff, because if you don't already know, the support classes in this game is going to be driven all around placing some sort of buff, whether that's a crit rate up buff, whether that's an attack power up buff, that sort of thing. And because of that, amplifying buff is going to directly increase that amount. So that's not going to be a bad one to go. And I think another one that you could also sub in there as well, depending on which toppings that you have, I would recommend doing a cooldown reduction, because again, cooldown reduction is only going to allow them to use that buff a lot more and a lot more often. And with that being the case, you can't go wrong. I mean, it's a support class. You're trying to get that buff off. You want that buff to come off as much as possible. So utilizing the amplifying damage or the cooldown reduction is going to be very, very good options when it comes to toppings, in my opinion, early game. Now diving into some of the substats as well for those specific toppings, whether it's cooldown and or amplification, I think you're definitely should just, cater those two, because if you don't already know, in this game, you can actually get toppings with the exact same substat. So with that being the case, you can get a cooldown with a cooldown substat. You can get a cooldown with a cooldown and an amplification substat. So again, just try to focus on those. I would totally focus on cooldown reduction for your substats, and then also amplifying buff as well for your substats for those specific toppings. So again, that's going to be your support class units. Again, they're all about focusing on trying to put buffs on as much as possible. So therefore, I would highly recommend building them and centering them all around cooldown reduction and amplification, are basically amplifying buff. The next one up is going to be kind of like a mix and a combination of everybody, and that's going to be all of your attacking units. So I know there's different classes when it comes to like the magic, what are these charges? I can't remember what they were called, but the chargers, the ambushes, the rangers, the bombers, the healers, that sort of thing. I know that they're going to be all different classes, but I still very, 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 very much believe that early game, you can't go wrong with attack. You cannot go wrong with those raspberries when it comes to those individual toppings that you're going to place on your cookies, because the attack, every single thing scales on attack. Your heal scale on attack, their ability scale on attack, their damage scales on attack, and with that being the case, you're going to 100% not go wrong with running attack, especially early game, because all you're going to be trying to do is put out as much damage as possible, as fast as possible, and you're going to be trying to clear as much of the content in the game in the adventure mode as possible. So with that being the case, I highly recommend that you focus on pretty much all of the rest of them on trying to farm out some raspberry toppings. And if you don't already know, you pretty much farm these toppings out from the adventure mode. Let me know down below in the comments what your guys' thoughts are on this. Do you guys have any other opinions? And please, I highly recommend that you guys explain them, not only for myself, but others in the community, so they can definitely get a better understanding of what they think or why you think the way that you do when it comes to the individual toppings. But that's going to be it for me, ladies and gentlemen. As always, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notification every time we drop a video, and I will see you guys on the next one.